Hey y'all, this is John here from Second Chance Composting, and I'm going to review the Powerhorse 3600 PSI 2.6 gallon per minute hot pressure washer. So I'm going to turn this around right now. Let's see if you can see me here. So we bought this. It is now, what's today? It's March 5th, 2025. We bought this last fall and I put everything together and I ran it once just to make sure everything worked. And we had no issues. Just ran it once. It was still not cold out. We didn't need it yet. So I just put it together, ran it, make sure it was good, and then put it away until winter, until we needed it. So we ended up not needing it until about December, the first week in December. So December 7th is when we first officially went to take it out on the road with us. And we ran into some problems immediately. So I had kind of read reviews and I knew some people really liked it. Other people had some pretty big issues with it. I mean, I've heard of it burning up and the heater totally getting engulfed in flames. There's been some pretty bad reviews. There's been some good reviews. For us, we paid a little over $1,000 for it, and that was far more affordable than we were ever going to get a hot pressure washer for. All the other ones that we're looking at were $4,000 or $5,000 or more. So this was kind of a risk we took, knowing that it might not work out the way we wanted to. But I was at a place where we needed a hot pressure washer, didn't have $4,000 or $5,000 to spend. This was an option that was somewhat of a risk, but one I was willing to take. And that risk came with some problems and some good. So I will say that I am reviewing this. It is now March 5th. We've been using it since December. So December, January, February, March. 4 months, and we've been using it once a week or so. So it's not really a long-term review, but I can give you some good and bad about it and our experience and my overall thoughts on the thing. So let me go over a couple things here. Let me show you it first. So here it is. I mean, if you're gonna buy it and look into it, you know what it is. The gauge is there for flow and temperature. On and off switch over here. Gas there. Propane. We bought a brand new tank to use. We bought a gauge to put on it just to know how much we had. One thing I do really like about this is I like the gun here. I don't know what it is about it, but it feels good. You got to be careful. This thing, when you're working with it, sometimes this comes loose without you doing anything. So you got to be mindful of that. Sometimes I'll be pressure rinsing totes out and I realize this thing's really loose. You just got to twist it back on, but that's something. And I really like this, the hose they send with it. It doesn't get twisted up as easily as some of the other ones I've used. I don't have a lot of experience using them, but my other one that I have for a cold pressure washer, it gets really tangled up and twisted. This one I like a lot, and it doesn't do that. So let me give you a couple things here. I wrote some notes. First of all, what's nice is it's lightweight. So, you know, I got a guy that works with me, my stepfather, and we can actually lift this right up into the trailer, just us two. So basically, and it doesn't quite fit through this door here, so all we have to do is lift it back, and this wheel bearing pops out, and then you take the wheel off and just replace it back on. So even in tight spaces, you can get it through. I will say, when I was unpackaging this thing, the directions are not very good. Because it comes on blocks, wooden blocks, and it doesn't tell you to not take those blocks out before. And basically on the directions, there's one page that you're reading from start to finish. You read it from the beginning, and as you're going, it tells you to do something, and then you flip the page and you realize you shouldn't have taken the blocks out without it telling you that before. So be pretty mindful of that, because it has some blocks in the packaging to hold it up so that these different inlets don't get bent or ruined before you put your wheels on. Because basically this whole thing was sitting on the ground and could have damaged this pipe because of it. So be very mindful when you're unpackaging it to keep it up off the ground so those things are not dragging. So lightweight, it can fit into pretty good spaces, easy to get those wheels off. I like that you can just take the Propane off pretty easily. Let me think what else here. I got some notes here. So let me start at the beginning. I bought this, and like I said, I put it all together, used it once, no problem, in the fall before it was cold. And it wasn't a problem, and I thought maybe it was like just because it was new or something. But when we used it, and the heat came on, it would kind of like go on and then go off. And then we held it and it stayed on, and we only ran it for not even 5 minutes, just to make sure it worked. And I didn't think anything of it until winter came and we put it up in our truck. It was a long morning. We had to snow blow the entire driveway, and 2 hours later, we were getting ready to go, put this thing in the truck, started up no problem. However, it would not get heat to the heating unit. And the issue is, and you can't see it here, but this is the big problem with these things. Right here is the battery box. 2 batteries go in there. Standard, I forget the size, but just regular batteries you buy at Walmart or something. Nothing high tech. The problem with this unit is these batteries, the metal connector inside is not built correctly. This is not only my problem. I've read reviews. Other people have had this problem. So you put the batteries in. If this thing wiggles around even a little bit, that connection gets off, and it's not reading that there's batteries in there, and the heat will not stay on. Also, the little tab that holds the battery up and in is a little tiny piece of plastic, and you can get the battery up and in, and it holds it in. But if you try to get the battery out, it snaps right off. We had it snap off like the first use on our other one, and like the second use on this one. So they really need to rethink how they are putting together this bottom battery box. So long story short, that morning I got the thing going. It was freezing out, or almost freezing out, and it would not heat up at all. And it was extremely frustrating. It was the first time I had used it. $1,000 unit. I had tried it before, ready to go out on my trip, ready to go out on our day. It was gonna be a long day. To not have the equipment that you bought work the way it's supposed to work was extremely frustrating. So I got a hold of the company that day or something and told them about the problem. They told me it was an issue other people had had, which I knew because I read the reviews. Telling me to put the batteries in this way, make sure I'm putting them in right, just making sure I'm not dumb, basically. And I found that the issue was that connector inside was not working properly. The metal piece that's supposed to come down and connect the battery and know that it's connected wasn't working. We took it out on another trip after that, and like it would work for a little while and then not work, and then it would like be working and stop while we were pressure washing, and I couldn't have that. So I got a hold of them again, and what they did is they sent me a whole new heater unit. So this white unit here, the heater, they sent me a whole brand new one. I didn't have to fight them for it. They sent it to me. Now, I wasn't too happy because I had to take that whole thing off and replace it. And I'm not a mechanic, but It took a couple bolts here and there. It took me over an hour, but it wasn't the end of the world. I had to take all these connections off down here and reconnect them. But I will say, ever since we got the new one, it's worked fine. So it might have been a unit that just wasn't made properly, but it's a very small part of the unit, and just for a battery connection not to work can make the whole thing not work the way it's supposed to work. I think is a big flaw. Again, this one's been fine other than getting the batteries out. It's snapped off again. It still works, but it doesn't hold the batteries in there. Plus that battery terminal, whatever you want to call it, area to get to is underneath. It's very hard to get to. It should have been put on the side, like as a slide-in unit or something. I'm not an engineer or anything, but I'm a common sense person. You know, this battery box, look at this thing. How are you supposed to get in here? How are you supposed to see if the batteries are gonna fit? That should have been like here on the side, going in. So you can just put them in like that and be done. So that was a big issue. But since we've changed it out, we have not had that issue since. So we actually have the other one in storage, and I feel like with a little finagling of those connectors inside, we can get that thing up to full use. And maybe mount it somewhere and use it on site to heat up water that we need for something else. So that thing itself, they sent me the invoice that was paid by them, but the heater unit itself was like $500. So they sent us that, no questions asked, and now I have a unit downstairs that I think with a little finagling we can get working. So it wasn't a total loss for us. So that was an issue. Let me see what else I got for notes here for you. Again, I don't have huge amount of time put into this thing. The heating capacity. So the display could be a little bit better. I mean, in the light, this thing turns red and tells you what the degree is. In the light, it's hard to see it, especially if you're like a little bit away from it, to know what the really heat is on it. We turn it all the way up, and we've used it from all the way up the entire time, and the flow all the way up the entire time. Like I said, we've been using it since December. We have not run out of propane yet. We use it once a week, so this has not been heavily used. But it heats up enough. We've had an extremely cold winter here with a lot of snow. There was about a month and a half where it was freezing temperatures consistently for the entire month and a half. Maybe 1 or 2 days was a little bit over 35. But it was significantly cold here the entire winter. Almost the entire time we used this. So we were dealing with some heavy freezing temperatures, and we were able to get this thing to get our totes rinsed out without really a problem. I mean, it was really the problem that the totes were totally frozen, but this thing did the job and was able to rinse them all out. It doesn't get as hot as I'm sure as a commercial scale hot pressure washer, like a one run by diesel or something. I've never used one, so I really can't say, but it got hot enough to do the job for us. No problem. Maybe if I used a commercial one, it would have done it quicker, but also that would have cost $4,000 or $5,000 more. So I was happy with what it's able to do as far as the work. Again, the maneuverability is nice. We can get this thing up in a truck and use it in the back of our truck. The exhaust comes out the top here, so you gotta be mindful of that. This is where the heat exhaust is, so if you're using this mobily, you're not gonna wanna burn, if you got it. We have a soft top out there, cap on our truck. It would burn right through that, so you gotta be careful of that. But overall, once we got that new heater unit on, it's worked pretty well. I will say that we were using it, and then we would run the antifreeze through it in order to store it until the next week. That worked fine. The only issue was it got so cold that this thing, I mean, it was freezing out, but still, this thing would not start one day for us. We were pulling on it, tugging on it, and it was kind of 3/4 of the way into an extremely long, freezing cold day. And the last thing we needed was issues with starting this thing. We came back and it would not start for us. We finally got it going because the engine was cold and everything, but it really shouldn't have been that much of a hassle. We were storing it out in the garage, so it wasn't heated, but I feel like it didn't need to be that much of an issue to get it going. We got it going, and since then I've stored it here in the office just to be safe because we were exhausted that day and we didn't feel like dealing with a machine that wasn't going to start. Yes, it was cold. No, it didn't need to be that rough of a start. So for what we do with it, we are basically rinsing out food scrap totes. So we bring this outside, we hook it up to our water, and then we basically are not moving it around much. We're just pressure washing the totes outside here. And our initial use for a little while, we were also putting it in the back of our truck and using it mobily, which we're going to start doing again too soon. And it's nice because it doesn't weigh that much and it can maneuver around like that. Just know that if you happen to get one with that weird battery connection, that faulty battery connection, if you move around a certain way, it might not be getting the heat that it needs. So the engine will run and the propane's on and it's pressure washing, but there's no heat coming from it, which I can buy a pressure washer for $300 instead of $1,000. So make sure you get a unit that works. They put these little things on here. I think they're kind of pointless, but that's kind of the gist of it. We're going to use this thing a little bit more and test it out. But so far, with all the bad I've said about it, I'm actually very happy with what it's been able to do for us. It's just been trial and error at the beginning, and if I spent $4,000 or $5,000, I might not have to deal with that. But this was a deal. I'm learning with it, and it'll work for us for now. So I would recommend it if you're on a budget. If you have a little more money, I would say probably to just bite the bullet and spend the money on something bigger and better, more efficient. But my daughter's crying, and I gotta go make sure she's okay. So happy composting, everybody. That's the Powerhorse 3600 2.6 gallon per minute propane hot pressure washer. Thanks.